You've probably run into this at least once in your life. On an important day, at a moment when you glance up at the wall clock to check the time, and it's stopped. It's a small thing, but it can throw everything off. You start second-guessing the time, wondering if you're already late or worse, realizing you've missed something that mattered. A wall clock isn't just there to fill an empty space. It quietly keeps your day on track, from the simplest routines to the moments you can't afford to miss. And when it suddenly stops, it doesn't just pause time, it creates confusion, inconvenience, and sometimes a bit of unnecessary stress. And we all know clocks don't just fail that easily. More often than not, the first thing worth checking is simple. Is the AA battery actually dead? First, I'll use a voltage meter to check what's going on. Even though the voltage meter is quite sensitive, it's not picking up any sign of life. At this point, it's safe to say this battery is completely dead. And just to avoid any doubts about staged results, I'll mark it so we can keep track. On top of that, I've prepared another AA battery that's still working properly, just to make the comparison a bit more convincing. The reading we get from this AA battery will serve as a reference point when I test how effective this dead battery revival trick really is. And one of the contributing factors, while not a direct cause, that can shorten a battery's lifespan is the small buildup of corrosion on its positive and negative terminals. Lightly sanding these two ends with sandpaper brings two benefits. First, it cleans off the oxidation. Second, it helps refresh the contact surfaces on both terminals. According to some experimental discussions often mentioned in informal research and DIY circles, there's an unusual method that attempts to revive a dead AA battery by boiling it in a mixture of Coca-Cola and salt for about 15 minutes. The idea behind it is fairly straightforward. The acidic properties of the Coca-Cola combined with the salt may help clean up residue and improve the contact condition inside the battery, at least to some extent. In this video, I'm not measuring an exact ratio. I'll be mixing it by eye, following the proportions you're seeing on screen, just to keep things practical and easy to follow. The goal here isn't to bring the battery back to full life, but to see whether this method can squeeze out a bit more usable performance in a real-world test. After boiling, I'll dry it off with a paper towel so it's clean and ready for the next step. Now that it's dry, I'll go a step further and give it a more thorough cleaning. This is WD-40, a multi-purpose oil that's become a familiar companion in all kinds of repair and maintenance work. It's best known for its ability to loosen stuck parts, reduce friction, and protect metal surfaces from moisture. In situations like this, a small amount can help clean off stubborn residue, improve contact between metal surfaces, and leave behind a thin protective layer that slows down future oxidation. It's one of those simple tools that doesn't make a lot of noise, but quietly makes the job smoother and a bit more reliable. Alright, now let's check and see how effective this trick really is. The result we're getting looks fairly promising, but I wouldn't jump to the conclusion that boiling it longer would fully recharge the battery. At best, this method might recover a small amount of usable energy, but expecting it to bring the battery back to full capacity isn't really realistic. So after everything we've tested today, you've seen the results with your own eyes. This little experiment doesn't perform miracles, and it won't turn a worn-out AA battery into something brand new, but it does tell us an interesting story. Sometimes a dead battery isn't completely useless. Under certain conditions, with a bit of cleaning and a bit of patience, you might recover just enough energy to get through a short task. Maybe it's a wall clock that needs to keep ticking a little longer, or a device that just needs a few more minutes before you can replace the battery properly. But at the same time, it's important to stay realistic. Methods like this are more about experimenting and understanding, rather than relying on them as a long-term solution. Batteries are designed to be used and eventually replaced, and no simple trick is going to change that completely. What I find more valuable here isn't just the result, but the process. Taking the time to test, to measure, to compare, and to see what actually works instead of just guessing. That's where these small experiments become meaningful. And maybe that's the real takeaway. You don't always need complicated tools or expensive solutions. Sometimes, a simple idea tested carefully can teach you something useful, or at the very least, satisfy a bit of curiosity. So if you enjoy this kind of hands-on testing, stick around. There are always more ideas to try, more small questions worth answering, and occasionally, a few results that might surprise you.